Welcome to the Anxious Love Coach podcast, a place for creating meaningful, conscious, secure, long-term partnerships. Here, we talk relationship anxiety and creating healthy, magnetic dynamics within partnership to help you feel confident and alive within committed partnership. My name is Natalie Kennedy, and I'm your host. I'm a relationship anxiety coach and meditation teacher. I've worked with hundreds of clients battling anxiety, and after experiencing extraordinary shifts in my own healing relative to partnership, now combine my lived personal experience and professional training to help others trust themselves within relationship and in their lives. I've been to the edge and back with my now husband from relationship anxiety and come out confidently to the other side. I want to pass the tools I've learned along to you to help you trust yourself in relationships and also create magnetic, hot dynamics with your partner. I believe lots of mainstream relationship advice today can make us anxious and dissatisfied. So let's jump in and normalize challenges that modern relationships and real people go through while also giving you tools to trust yourself, drop the shame, and alchemize your messy, twisted relational truths into profound inner wisdom and aliveness. If you haven't yet, be sure to join my communities over on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Anxious Love Coach. You can also request a 30-minute relationship anxiety assessment with me depending on availability, or ask me a question over on my website at www.anxiouslovecoach.com. I've also got a wonderful relationship anxiety meditation available to you as thanks for subscribing to my email list. Thanks for being here and enjoy this episode. Hey, welcome back to the podcast. So glad that you're here. Thank you for hopping on with me today. Today's episode is for those of you who have a really difficult time with stopping controlling your partner. You know that it's not helping your relationship, and yet you keep on doing it. This episode is for you. I will say two things. Number one, this is the second time I'm recording this episode, and so that's all. But it's still going to be a great episode. And number two, I don't know that you will potentially undo decades of trauma and out of control feelings that are at the root of controlling your partner excessively in one podcast episode. So full disclosure and disclaimer on that. However, I do think that by becoming more aware of what we're doing and me giving you some alternatives and things that you can do instead of controlling your partner and illustrating a vision for what it can look like when we start trusting ourselves and our partners more, I'm hopeful that it will inspire you to try something new today in your partnership, because it really, really can get better. If you're struggling with relationship anxiety and one of the ways that you deal with relationship anxiety is trying to nitpick, criticize, and otherwise change an autonomous human who you have no control over, then this episode is for you. And I just want to let you know that you are really, really not alone. Earlier this afternoon, Preston was lying on my lap and I was just like scratching his hair. He likes his head scratches. I'm pretty sure I have a husband who is either a cat or a dog. I'm not sure in some ways. But there was some really peaceful music playing in the background. He was lying on my lap, eyes closed, and I was just kind of staring out the window, scratching his head. And I looked down and I saw him, like the corners of his mouth, smiling in a very content way. And my heart just, it broke open in this really wonderful way. And I just think back to those 4 years where I had one foot out the door for multiple reasons, due to my own trauma and due to Preston's trauma and all of the shit that we went through that made us so ick with each other. That was really, really difficult. There are many people in our position, that would have separated, and I wouldn't blame them for it one bit. But for whatever reason, we kept going and we made it to this place where it's just, I can't imagine life without this person. So I hope that my story can give you hope. Obviously, it's not a guarantee. Nothing's ever a guarantee. But I share this with you to just let you know that healing is possible. Changing these habits is possible. And not only is it possible to stop having relationship anxiety, but it's possible to create the relationship of your dreams. I really do believe that. Is it important to normalize dips in attraction and important to normalize difficulty and challenge and conflict? Yes. Do I still have that in my relationship? All the time, you guys. But I also want to let you know that it gets really, 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 really good. It can get really, really, really good. And while I said none of this is a guarantee, the way to maximize the likelihood that your relationship starts to get really, 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 really good, like beyond your wildest dreams good, is to keep your eyes on your own paper and clean up your side of the street. And so the process of stopping controlling your partner is partially, yes, we've talked about this in the past, working through your trauma and things like that cause you to be controlling. But also we want to look into the future. Like, what do you want to replace your poor behavior with? That's where I want to come in and show you like what to actually do when these impulses to basically suffocate our partner with our agenda, what to do instead. So hopefully this episode can support you. Back in the days when my relationship anxiety was really bad, I honestly was so worried that I picked the wrong partner. When I first met Preston, I was super into him. I realized that's not everybody's story, but it was mine. And then like some years in, I started getting the ick real bad. And I genuinely thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was wrong to choose my partner that is now my beloved husband. And part of the reason I was afraid that I'd picked the wrong partner, and maybe this is why you think you might have potentially picked the wrong partner, is partially because my partner was showing signs that he'd gotten comfortable with me and he wasn't being romantic anymore. There were genuine aspects of the relationship that were unsatisfying and codependent and icky and unconscious. Kisses were short, a lot shorter than I wanted them to be. He wasn't really looking me in the eyes when he said hello. He spent a lot of time gaming and drinking energy drinks and sleeping when he wasn't working. And our sex life was just really unsatisfying. It felt like I didn't know what I wanted, so I didn't know how to communicate it. And so I wasn't getting the kind of sex that I enjoyed. And as a result, I started associating sex with not being enjoyable because I didn't even know what kind of sex I liked. I just knew that the kind of sex that we were having was not cutting it for me. And yet my partner needed it. I really do believe that maybe this is a case for men, maybe this is a case for all people, but I will say that for my husband, sex is a need. It's oxygen to him as much as emotional connection is to me. And so I respect it as a need. I treat it as if it's like air and water and food for this man. So I take his sexual needs very seriously. But back in the day, it was very hard for me to authentically want to meet him there because I just had real bad ick. And again, like I said, part of it was the way that he was showing up, but part of it was the way I was showing up. It took two to tango. And another reason that I worried that I was maybe with the wrong partner, and this is the more vulnerable piece, but I didn't like getting vulnerable in my relationship. Part of the reason I worried was I was afraid that if I took the risk of going all in on this partner, this quite imperfect person, that my heart was going to get shattered and that I was either he was going to leave me or I was going to build a life and decide that it was all a waste and leave him and have kids and get divorced and this horrific thing. And I was so afraid that if I invested so much in this and then it just collapsed, that would mean I was a failure. And that was my deepest, darkest fear. And there were signs that we maybe were incompatible or things were not okay. And I can't look at you, listener, and diagnose you perfectly. Some of you guys are with partners that you're going to stick it out with and end up being very happy you did that with. And some of you guys are going to find out in 5 years that it's not working. And some of you guys might break up tomorrow. Who knows? Anyway, all these combinations exist out of all you podcast listeners, which is simultaneously so beautiful and I'm sure terrifying as well. So when we were going through this, I felt really, really awful. I had so much shame, and I thought that I had three options to deal with this anxiety that was in my chest about my relationship, my constant obsessive and overthinking. I thought that there were only three things I could do. I could try to express my displeasure at how he wasn't being romantic and not stepping up around in our lives and not taking initiative in our relationship. I could tell him that I didn't like the way he was behaving. I could tell him I didn't like these habits and hope that he changes. So that's one thing. That was one perceived option. Or I could shut up and tolerate it. That was option 2. Or I could leave. Those were the three options in my head. And I honestly, and tell me if you think your three options are tell him how wrong he's being, leave, or shut up and tolerate it, those I don't know about you, but I don't like any of those options, but I didn't see any other options because the way I was communicating was the way I learned how to communicate, and I didn't know any other way. And it was awful because I deeply loved my partner, but I did not respect him. And to continue in the relationship was absolutely terrifying. I felt really trapped. I felt resentful. I felt angry. And I felt really scared and really sad because deep, deep, deep down, I wanted one of those relationships that you see in Hollywood and Disney. And even though Hollywood and Disney movie love, in my opinion, doesn't exist, you can create your own Disney movie in your love life. I really do believe that, but it requires you throwing out a lot of shoulds. My relationship anxiety was so bad that one day, back in the day when I had relationship anxiety, I taught corporate yoga. And I went before COVID hit and all the offices closed. I would go teach yoga, and one of these corporate offices that I taught yoga at was actually a company that I used to work for. I quit and then came back as a yoga teacher like a couple years later. And some of the people that I used to work with at that company were now my students in my corporate yoga class. And there was one day where I was having a really bad episode of relationship anxiety. And I didn't want people to see it in my face, like the deadness in my eyes and the heart pounding and the fear and the numbness and the inability to look people in the eye and really give them a genuine smile. I mean, I felt like such a fraud, you guys, going to these corporate offices where people are really stressed out and they're going to this yoga and meditation class, which really it's such an honor to teach yoga. And I just could not live up to the standard that I would have loved to have held myself at the time. You know, people come to these yoga classes or these meditation classes to heal, to find themselves. And so they look to these yoga meditation teachers as these all-knowing beings and the person who has all the answers. And I so did not have all the answers. I was so lost. And so I remember driving to class and I had decided to do like a yoga nidra class where I could turn all the lights off. I used to carry this like super heavy salt lamp in my bag. And so I was going to set up my salt lamp and my singing bowls. I had a couple of them, or I had one singing bowl that I brought, and I was going to turn off all the lights and have everybody lie down and close their eyes and just play music and do something very, very restorative and minimalist. And I didn't do it because I didn't set up a restorative class because I was so excited to teach a restorative class. I set up a restorative class so that I didn't have to look anybody in the eye and say anything inspiring. If any of you guys are yoga teachers or meditation teachers, maybe you've had this day where you just teach the bare bones and let the practice do the teaching so that you don't have to do the teaching, because sometimes life can get in the way. Anyway, ironically, even though I was teaching yoga and meditation, those were some of the most lost years of my life. And I walked into class that day expecting to teach a restorative yoga class, and 2 people showed up, and they happened to be people that I had worked with in the past. They were 2 girlfriends of mine that I loved so dearly. And fortunately and unfortunately, they both knew just by reading my face that I was not okay. And they were like, "Are you okay?" And I pretty much broke down crying. There was nobody else there. And so my professional facade just collapsed. And I opened up to them and let them know about the relationship anxiety that I was experiencing. And lucky for me, both of these women at that time had been in long-term relationships, were either engaged or married. These girls are still with the men that they were with then, and some of them have kids. To my girls that showed up that day, thank you. And they both just held me and said, "Girl, I see you. I've felt this way with my partner too." And that was really, really healing. So I share this story with you for two reasons. One, to let you know that you're not alone, that I know the extent of relationship anxiety. I know that it can be debilitating. It can make it really difficult for you to function. It's one thing to have some anxiety, but be able to keep doing what you do. And it's another when it's next to impossible to function because you have so much fear about losing someone that you love because of how you feel towards them. I understand. I really do. And the second reason I share this is because having great friends is everything. Get yourself some good friends. And if you don't have them, find them. And at the end of this episode, I'm going to share something with you really exciting that I hope will help you find support in a group way. So make sure you stick around all the way to the very end today. And let's get talking about controlling our partners when we have relationship anxiety. So in that time when I was really struggling, one of the beliefs I had was if I can just get my partner to change and get him to live up to this standard of him that I hold in my head, then he would be perfect for me and I wouldn't have any doubts. And then I would be able to move on with my life and I would be happy. Yay. So my way of trying to mold my partner into my fantasy version of him, so I would try to control my partner. And I just want to let you know, sometimes I still do this, but I catch myself quicker and I do it rarely now. And when I do catch it, I apologize. Now, a past version of me would scoff at the idea of apologizing for being controlling because at the time it seemed like my partner really did need to change and therefore I was just being helpful. But the truth is, the cause of my misery was not the fact that my husband was, or my partner, boyfriend at the time, now my husband. The cause of my misery was not because my partner wasn't changing. The cause of my misery was my total lack of ownership over my joy and my pleasure. And also because I was behaving like a miserable person behaves. And I just want to have a lot of compassion here and for anyone who's in this position, because I realize that changing behaviors is a lot easier said than done because these behaviors are coming from painful emotions and those do need to be worked through. So I'm just offering you the disclaimer that this is easier said than done. I'm not going to spend a ton of time today talking about the why behind we're controlling. We will a little bit, mainly because I've covered it in past episodes, like there's belief systems and trauma at play. And yes, they do need to be worked with. But I also believe that we can analyze why we do this endlessly. We can go into the past and we can think about who controlled us, who made us feel out of control inside, who made us feel like we have something to prove. But at some point, once we figure out like, okay, I have a pretty good idea of why I do this, and we have some compassion for ourselves and we feel our feelings, at some point, we have to make a decision that we're going to try something different. And we have to decide, okay, what do I want to replace this behavior with? How do I want to proceed? How do I want to change moving forward? And this is one of the reasons, as much as I support therapy and think therapy is amazing, and when I work with clients, I do help them process old emotions. But this is one of the reasons I love being a coach, because especially coaching from a mindfulness perspective, because we can make space for the emotions that are here. We can visit the past. We can thank the past for giving us the beliefs that served us then. We can acknowledge and move through these tough emotions that are still living inside of us. But ultimately, what I really want is for you to start moving into the future and making changes that are going to be empowering for the version of you that you want to become now, right? And coaching for that reason is so amazing because you actually have a lot more power sometimes than you think you do. I don't know. Maybe that came out a little patronizing. That's not quite what I mean. A lot of us think that we are powerless, and I just want to let you know that you're not. There, that's better. That's what I meant to say. That said, there's so much more to say about how to stop controlling and why you're being controlling and all of these things, more than I could ever capture in one episode. So hopefully you listen to lots of episodes, and hopefully you stick around and hear me talk about this over and over enough to the point where this message will start to stick. And the message is this. If you take one thing away from today, it's this understanding. I would love to download it into your bones. Your partner will never change when you're trying to change them. Your partner will never change when you're trying to change them. People don't change for other people. They change for themselves, and they change when it benefits them. If you try to change another person, they are going to resist. I have never changed because someone told me to change. I changed because it benefited me to change. And if we can understand that on a deep level, we can relax and bring our eyes back to our own papers. And I'm going to talk to you today about how to do that. So when we're externally controlling, it's largely because we feel out of control inside, and we don't trust that life has got us. We don't trust that our partner's got us. And most of all, we don't trust that we have got us. If you knew you'd be okay, even if everything went to shit, you'd relax. And to be fair, you can't just mindset your way into this. This takes time to witness enough times. You need to witness things not going the way you expected, and witness yourself recovering and thriving amidst uncertainty. So it's not enough to just tell yourself, if that bad thing were to happen, I'd be okay. You need to witness yourself going through things that you don't expect, and witness yourself getting to the other side. Over time, that is how you build self-trust. You start to realize, yeah, I'm a trustworthy person because I've survived 100% of all these things in my life. I'm still here. And not just the things you've gone through, but the emotions that you felt in your life. Witnessing yourself feeling hard emotions, witnessing yourself getting to the other side of a trauma response, getting to the other side of a panic attack, watching yourself get to the other side and finish the hump of a big cry, watching yourself grieve and thinking, yeah, I did that. Look at how strong I am. If something like that were to happen again, I'd be okay because I've done it before. That is what self-trust does. And it takes time to build. It's not easy. You're not going to just get it in this one podcast episode. It's a lot of self-trust is built through your lived experience. So just know that and be patient. What I want to offer you today, just as an exercise, is to, for a moment, just imagine your inner controller, almost like it's a video game character that runs around and tries to control everything. What does it look like if you could draw it on a piece of paper? What would your inner controller look like? Is it like an Energizer Bunny type character? Is it a little kid with frazzled hair? Like what is your inner controller character like when it comes out? What does it look like? And what does it want? What does it want? Most of the time, in my experience, our inner controller is a part of us that loves very, very deeply and is afraid of loss. So I pulled Instagram. I've been talking about controlling your partner for a few weeks now. It's a theme that's been coming up for me recently. And I asked you guys on Instagram, what are you afraid would happen if you stopped trying to control your partner? I want to share with you many responses because I got a lot. And I want you to pay attention to see if you hear yourself in any of these. All right, so the question again, what are you afraid would happen if you stopped trying to control your partner? Okay. I will be unsatisfied because things won't go my way. There is no hope that our lifestyles will ever be compatible. He will be a basic average Joe, and I will get bored of him soon. He won't meet my needs, and I will feel resentful and have to leave. He will become lazy and our dreams won't come true. He will take horrible care of his physical health and be unattractive. I will be committing to a partnership that won't make me feel alive. Maybe my worst fears about him will come true. Maybe that he'll cave to his family every time. That my partner will say or do things that will cause other people to criticize him/our relationship. He'll continue to watch porn, which will make him less attracted to me, lusting over other women. My partner will take me for granted. He's emotionally cheated with exes before, and I worry if I'm not vigilant, it will happen again. He won't succeed in getting that good job or that good college if I don't push him. He won't work on himself. He'll fall deeper into his hole of depression. People will think my boyfriend is weird, or that I'll get judged on his behavior. I could have cut down on that, but those were so deep. I wanted to read all of them. But I just want to let you know that those were only some of the reasons. You guys poured your heart out on that particular poll. So what's your reason? Take your journal out. Maybe you want to pause the podcast or just contemplate on it. Ask the controlling part of you, what are you afraid would happen if we stop trying to control our partners? And see what comes up. Because once you know that, then you can realize that most likely there is some pain sitting underneath that needs to be felt and acknowledged and sat with. And again, once you get to the other side of that pain, you will start to build the trust and the resiliency to know that you could handle it. So there's some podcasts in the past on working through emotions. You can listen to those. So I'm going to talk now about, what control looks like once we know, what's the fear driving this behavior inside of us. We think that we're being helpful in a lot of cases, but it's actually just our way of avoiding anxiety. And how does this show up? Sometimes it's more obvious. It could be a comment like, hey, honey, I think you should go to the gym, or stop eating junk food, or stop drinking energy drinks, right? We think we're being helpful, but your partner knows that this is not about being helpful, because what would actually be really nourishing to our partners in a lot of cases is acceptance, which is not what we're doing. Some more obvious methods of control. Maybe you kick your partner under the table when they say something you don't like. Or you're about to go out to dinner with a group of friends and you point out a defect on his shirt. You say, oh, it's wrinkled. Oh, your shirt has a stain or a hole on there. Oh, you're going to wear that? Okay. So those are more obvious. I feel like these have a certain flavor to them. We can kind of generally feel when we're being controlling if we pay attention. This is why mindfulness is very helpful. But sometimes control is less obvious. And I want you to start to pay attention to the most subtlest ways that you can be controlling, because those are the more insidious, difficult ones to break. I'm going to give you a couple of stories to show you the ways that I do it. The most subtle ways that I try to control my partner. When I cook dinner and I call my partner and let them know that dinner is ready and it's hot, there's a little voice in my head that wants to get eating, but doesn't want to wait for my partner, because by the time my partner gets here, the food might be cold and I don't want to eat cold food, so I'm going to start eating now. Or I might decide to wait, but then again, what if he doesn't come in the time that I want him to, and then we both start eating and then it's cold and then I'm resentful, la 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 la. And so what do I do? Because I don't want to spend too much time waiting, I call a second time. So that first time, honey, dinner's ready. If I don't hear him respond, that's one thing. But if he says, okay, I'll be down in a minute, and then all of a sudden it's been 10 minutes, you now have a choice. Do you start eating without him? Or do you call a second time? I think in my opinion, if we call a second time, I think it's one of those more subtle forms of control, because we're in essence saying, I don't trust that you heard me. So for me, not being controlling means trusting that he heard me the first time and that he's coming in his own time and he's got his own thing that has nothing to do with me. So that's one. And if he gets cold food, he gets cold food. He can heat it up himself. Meanwhile, I get to enjoy my hot meal. And rather than spending a bunch of time thinking about how he's not going to get hot food and he's not going to be as impressed by my hot food because he came down when it was cold, rather than focusing on his experience of dinner, I focus on my experience of dinner. And oh my God, am I such a good cook? Yummy. All right. I'm going to give you another example of subtle control, and actually what can happen when you stop controlling your partner. It can be the don't forget tos. Don't forget to do this. So we're in Bangkok right now, and we went to this little sushi restaurant. And at the end of the dinner, we have to pay up front. It's not like a lot of restaurants in the US where they bring you the bill. You have to go up front and pay. So we went up to the front, and Preston is a normal dude, and he doesn't have a purse, so he emptied out his pocket contents onto the counter so that he could get cash to pay the bill. So he has all his bills and money and coins on the counter, and he's counting up the amount of cash. He has also placed our apartment key on the counter. And in my head, I am thinking, I hope he remembers to grab the apartment key. And there was a little part of me that wanted to say, don't forget to grab the apartment key. Basically saying, I don't trust you to remember to bring the apartment key. Okay. And in that moment, I decided, do I want to send him the message that I don't trust his judgment? Or do I want to trust him in this moment and keep the intimacy? By the way, not saying that you can never, ever make a suggestion or that you can never point something out or correct your partner. I'm not saying that, but I'm just sharing a story with you to illustrate a point, okay? So rather than monitoring whether he's going to grab the apartment key or not, I decided to go outside and wait for him outside the restaurant and just people watch and let him come meet me after he paid the bill. And I just completely forgot about the apartment key. Guess what happened? We get to the apartment, and I had completely forgot about the apartment key. Completely. I was like, I trust my partner. We'll get it. We get to the apartment. We'd taken an Uber back to the apartment, and all of a sudden we are at the apartment, and he's fumbling through his pockets, and he's like, do you have the key? And I was like, I don't know. Let me check. And my memory is not super great. So I could have had the key. I could have not. I'm not sure. But I start looking through my purse. The key's not there. He's looking through his pockets. The key is not there. And I don't remember that I decided to walk out and trust him. And all of a sudden I did remember. And I said, babe, the last place I saw it was on the counter at the restaurant. And he was like, oh, shit. And the restaurant was closing in 15 minutes. So we had to scramble, grab an Uber, go back to the restaurant, run up 7 flights of stairs because these freaking malls in Bangkok are really, really tall. And fortunately, we got the key and we were able to get back home. But here's the thing I want to point out. The past version of me might have scoffed at him and said, God, why did you forget that? But the truth is, a few weeks earlier, I had bought a $100 hat in Australia. It was a really nice hat. And 3 days later, I thought I left it in a restaurant. And it was just a human moment. And my partner zipped it and didn't say a word. If I had lost that hat, he would not have criticized me. And so I was so grateful because in my head, I was criticizing myself. I was like, you can't even hold on to a hat for 3 days without losing it. That was a dialogue in my head. And my partner did not add to that dialogue, and I am so grateful. And so in that moment, when my partner left our apartment key at the restaurant, I extended that grace too, because I will get on his case when I never lose something, and I lose things all the time, and I forget things all the time. And you know what was really cool is the ride back to the restaurant was kind of funny. It was silly. We were running back and through the mall trying to find it, and we were like, oh my God, we got to get there before it closes. And it was like we were both in on it, as opposed to my husband's in on it and I'm just rolling my eyes. No, it was both of us going to run back and get the key. There was a sense of an alliance because, as I said, I prioritized my relationship with my husband over protecting him from consequences of his own actions. So after he picked up the key, he turned to me and he said, hey, thanks for not criticizing me over that. And I was like, are you kidding? I can't, I can't criticize you for that. That could happen to me anytime. And so what could have been a really stressful moment, what could have been an opportunity to criticize, turned into a moment of connection and intimacy. And I share this to illustrate that when you stop controlling your partner, a lot of the things that you have been trying to prevent from happening might in fact happen. But a lot of times, let's say, I had a client once who was trying to manage her partner's financial decisions. And she was like, I'm afraid if I don't give him financial advice, he's going to make financial mistakes. And while I do think that that's valid and that's really scary, I also think that when we are doing that, we prevent them from learning these things themselves. Our partners are, if you're listening to this and you're a fully grown adult, or at least if you're in the dating ages, you're approaching adulthood, our partners are as capable of learning life lessons as we are. And all of the life lessons that you learned, you probably learned on your own. And so your partner will learn them the same way that they've learned all their life lessons. Anyway, you might notice that as you stop controlling, your partner might run into the consequences of their own behaviors. And if you're willing to not say, I told you so, you might actually find that your partner knows how to clean up their own messes, and your partner knows how to take accountability, and your partner knows how to be responsible. Let them surprise you. And you might find that a lot of intimacy is restored, and you might be impressed by the ways that your partner takes care of things on their own. So don't call them the second time to dinner. Trust that they heard you the first time. Throw out your don't forgets if you already asked them once. And I know that that's super vulnerable because it requires you to practice trusting your partner and practice sitting in the void of not knowing and practice sitting in the waiting. And I know how hard that is, but I promise you that your intimacy will do a lot better as a result. Actually, I can't promise anything, but I've seen it happen enough times to trust that it works a lot better than criticizing and controlling and nitpicking. So stopping being controlling is about noticing your impulse to change who your partner is being right now. And I wish I could say that it's a complicated thing, but it's not. It's actually very simple, but it's also so hard. It really is as hard and as simple as practicing restraint, relaxing your jaw while keeping your mouth shut in some cases, relaxing your jaw, your shoulders, and your belly, and actively reminding yourself, my partner is a grown adult and capable of fending for themselves without my rescuing. So one of people's biggest needs, including yours, is autonomy. It's also worth noting that if your partner has a behavior that you don't like, chances are that there is a consequence that you're seeing that you think that they're not seeing. Give them a chance to see it for themselves. There's a coach that I really like named Laura Doyle, and she says, life lessons, not wife lessons. My partner does not like receiving wife lessons. He much prefers life lessons. When I bit my tongue and said I trust my partner to grab the key, and if he doesn't grab the key, I trust him to figure out how we're going to get in the house that night. And when he forgot, he got a life lesson, but he didn't get a wife lesson. We got intimacy instead, right? Life lessons, not wife lessons. And if you're not a wife, it's okay. Just apply it to yourself. Also, when you are the nagging voice that they have to defend against, they don't get to hear the voice of their own conscience. In order for them to be able to hear that, you have to get out of the way. So there have been many instances where my partner does something, such as the case where he left the apartment key at the restaurant. After we picked it up, he said, "I'm so sorry about that. And thank you for not criticizing me." A lot of times your partner will clean up the mess and take ownership of it. But imagine what might have happened if I'd have said, I saw it and I knew that you were going to forget it. I told you, Well, my partner is now put in the position, unless he's Buddha, which he's not, because I'm not either. Unless he's a really enlightened being, most people are going to respond with, "I didn't mean to, and now you are in a pattern. When you let silence speak for itself, your partner's conscience will kick in. And a lot of cases, they will clean messes up themselves. And I can't make a promise out of this, but if they know that they hurt you, or they know that something they did towards you was out of line, a lot of times this is the place where a person will authentically come and apologize when they feel safe around you. So when you don't be that critical voice, their conscience will kick in. And if you want your partner's conscience to kick in, that means biting your tongue instead of saying, "I told you so," when you watch your partner fail, and asking, "Are you okay?" instead. One of the things that's been helpful for me is to tell myself, I will get on him for his bad habit after I have quit my own bad habit. And this is what I mean by keeping your eyes on your own paper. So as an example, one of the bad habits I have, thanks to some anxiety that I still sometimes get, and it's not even super conscious, I sometimes chew on the inside of my own cheek. And over the years, if I'm not careful and I'm going through a really rough transition, the inside of my mouth will look like train tracks, you guys. Tell me on Instagram if we have any cheek biters in this audience. So that means telling myself, if there's something I want my partner to change, like leaving wet towels on the floor, okay, I will get on him for his wet towels on the floor after I have quit chewing on my cheeks. I will get on his case for eating junk food after I have stopped going to bed at 2 a.m. I will get on his case for drinking energy drinks when I have developed a healthier relationship with social media. What is yours? Send me your sentence on social media. I will nitpick my partner for his bad habit after I have kicked my own bad habit, okay? Again, just as an example, part of the reason I didn't criticize my partner for leaving the key at the restaurant is because a few weeks earlier, I had left my hat at the restaurant. So this is just human. And extend your partner some grace. It'll benefit you in the long run. So one of the benefits of kind of keeping my mouth shut and having discernment about when to speak up and when to make a suggestion, if at all, because a lot of times my partner wasn't looking for my help or my suggestions. He was looking for permission to just live his life. As I started to kind of lean back and trust first myself, but also my partner more, one of the benefits that I already mentioned was he started to clean up his own messes. He started to take more initiative, and he started apologizing for things when he'd been wrong without my prompting. But you know what's really, really cool? And this is where I want you guys to get excited, is my partner started taking more risks in love. He started buying me gifts. I remember I remember my partner or my husband bought me a necklace a few months ago, and I don't think my husband has gotten me a jewelry in years. And so when he received it, I was like, oh my God, it's happening. And I was so grateful. So when we stop controlling our partners, they naturally start looking for ways to please us. So I started receiving more gifts. My husband started offering me tea and water and food and being more romantic, all unprompted. I didn't have to tell him to do this stuff. I just started speaking my desires more. And naturally, when you let go of attachment to your partner loving you in a very specific, narrow way, your partner will start to make a fool out of themselves for love. They will start taking more risks, the kind of risk that maybe they took in the honeymoon phase. And this is what I mean when I say it's possible to have a honeymoon phase later on in your relationship. I am going to argue that the honeymoon phase is caused by having a wide open heart and being vulnerable with one another. And if you are willing to do that, if you're both willing to be in that state, in that place where you can get your heart broken, there's a lot of magic in those places. And it certainly happened for me. When I let go and started trusting my husband, he started going out of his way to take care of me. It's been such a beautiful thing. And it's so, so, so beautiful. When your partner feels free to be themselves without consequences, they naturally start exploring ways to delight you. And there's a huge difference between desiring to delight you versus being afraid to disappoint you. Listen to that carefully, because one of these elicits abundant, constant inspiration, and the other elicits fear and bare minimum efforts. Your man could take the trash out for you, and one of them could be because he wants to delight you, and the other one could be because he's afraid if he doesn't, he's going to get in trouble, right? Same action, but different energy. One of them's based in love and adoration. One of them's based in fear. So if you want your partner to not just take out the trash, but want to take out the trash, because you can make a guy take out the trash, but you can't make him want to take out the trash. If you want your partner to want to delight you, it needs to be safe for them to take risks. It needs to be safe for them to come to you with something vulnerable and know that they're not going to get in trouble. It needs to be safe to make mistakes. If you want your partner to take risks in love for you, it needs to be safe to make mistakes with you. They're not going to get in trouble if they leave the key at the restaurant, okay? They're not going to get criticized if their shirt is wrinkled. That is how you get a partner who will make a fool out of themselves to love you. Now, personally, nobody ever taught me this, so I've had to learn it over 11 years in partnership and arguably 4.5 years with an ex that I just totally botched that relationship because I was the most controlling person on the planet. I've had to learn all this through a lot of inner work, a lot of healing, and observing people in both unhappy and unhappy relationships, lots of trial and error, and lots of reading and coaching. And one of the things I realized when I was on my honeymoon recently is that what keeps me motivated to be a great partner, because let's be real, I fall back into these patterns easily. It's not intuitive for me a lot of these times. But what keeps me motivated is you guys. It's this podcast. It's my TikTok. It's my Instagram. In a weird way, by running Anxious Love Coach, even though I'm doing this to be of service, I just want you guys to know that just knowing that you guys are listening to this, it holds me accountable. I sometimes imagine you guys are watching me in a moment of conflict, and it's almost like I want the audience to cheer when I make a good decision in partnership. So you guys keep me accountable to make sure that I'm proud of how I show up in partnership every day. So I always want to share my wins as well as my mistakes with you because A, I have heard that you enjoy it, but B, sharing this with you and getting your feedback and hearing that you're going through this too and hearing that this is a constant effort for you, it keeps me going. It keeps me accountable to be the best version of myself. And I'm really, really so grateful for this community, whether you tell me or not. I see the numbers of the people are listening to this podcast. It really motivates me. So thank you for being a listener. And like I said, on the honeymoon, I really realized how important it is when you're trying to change a habit to have some kind of community support and accountability. And I've really been thinking about how to create this sort of space. And I know in my last episode, I was talking about potentially starting some ads for this podcast. Press and I talked about it. We decided to throw it out for now. Maybe we'll do ads later. But I did also mention starting a Patreon, and we have decided to open that up today. So I'm very excited to announce that Anxious Love Coach is starting its own Patreon family. And this is another way for me to support you. I believe that when we are changing a habit, it's important to have eyes on you. It's important to have a community. And I also realize that there are people in other countries where the exchange rate doesn't permit them to work one-on-one or in a group program that I have, or even buy a course or do something like a Wizio. And I really want people in those positions to be able to get support in a way that's affordable. So I've been thinking long and hard about okay, what are some ways that I can still make a living, but also serve more people in a more intimate way? And Press and I talked about this, and we realized that the Patreon would actually be a really, really wonderful way to create a sort of exclusive community that is paid, but it is probably the most affordable group setting community that we have where people can come together. So I'm going to explain what we're doing here with Patreon in just a second. First of all, if you love my content, if you love my Instagram, my podcast, and my email list and all this, the TikTok stuff I put, if you love that stuff, consider becoming a patron. It's a great way to support me. Let me know you appreciate my work. I spend a lot of time creating content every day. My work is not just making content. My work is also just sitting around thinking about things. A lot of my work is also sitting on the subway and observing couples and getting inspired by other relationships. A lot of my work is going on TikTok and seeing what people are thinking about in terms of relationships, observing trends. So that's all my work too. And I love it so much. For me, it's so much fun. I geek out over noticing what people are talking about in relationships and what dynamics I'm observing. I love it. So if you love that I do this, consider supporting me. It keeps me doing this for hopefully the rest of my life. I love it so much. But in exchange, I'm doing something that I really haven't done in a long time, which is every month as a patron, you will get access to a hangout. So I have 2 tiers right now. There's a $5 tier where you can just view all the hangouts I've had on Zoom. But for $4 extra, you could hang out with me once a month on Zoom. And in this Zoom call, I'm going to be doing stuff that I usually reserve for my group programs where we do meditations and embodiment sessions together. We do breath work. I'm going to bring topics of the day. I'm going to invite you guys to share in the chat what's coming up for you and support each other in the chat. We'll be able to see everybody's faces if you decide to share, have your camera on. And I will also be hosting a Q&A. And so you can put your questions that you have for me, things that are going on for you in your life that you want insight on. You can share that, and I will be supporting you for anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. I want to answer as many questions as I can. And when I started thinking about offering a monthly community hangout on Patreon, I got really, really excited, and I felt this real warmth in my chest. And it just feels like such a win-win, win-win-win. So that said, the first call, our first Zoom hangout / Q&A is going to be on April 27th. And you don't have to attend live, but it would be great if you do. And right now today, I am opening up a early bird rate for our first 50 patrons. So we have a couple of tiers. The highest tier is the one where you can attend the live calls and ask me questions. For the first 50 patrons, I am offering that for $5 a month. Literally for the price of a cup of coffee, you can come hang out with me for a few hours every month via Zoom by being a patron. And another thing I'm going to be doing, which is really exciting, is every week I'm going to bring back terrible relationship advice, but I'm going to be doing it on Patreon. I don't like doing terrible relationship advice on Instagram or really just to the public, mainly because a lot of times I'm responding to something that I've seen publicly, and I don't like calling people out. I don't like giving people an excuse to go attack that person, especially on TikTok. I hate the stitch feature. I know I can be respectful in a video, but I don't trust that if my video goes viral, that a bunch of people won't go attack the creator of content that I disagree with. So I'm going to be posting terrible relationship advice that I see on the internet, but I'm going to be posting it exclusively in Patreon. So if you want like a little bit of drama, every week I'm going to find something that I disagree with and advice that I think is disempowering, and I'm going to share it in Patreon. So it's going to be a really beautiful community. It'll be a great place for us to chat and connect. And again, our first call is the 27th. It'll be a Q&A, super wonderful. We'll do some meditation and connection. And it'll be a great place for you to potentially meet people who are going through the exact same thing as you so that you don't feel so alone. Relationship anxiety is tough, but it is way worse when you think you're the only one experiencing it. I wish I had a community like this when I had relationship anxiety. And it's probably I've never offered a group hangout for basically $9 a month. It's crazy. So I hope you'll join. Again, the first 50 get a permanent early bird rate for $5 a month. So I'll put the link in the show notes and you can join. It's going to be so wonderful. I'm so excited. So that is my big announcement. I am now a patron, or I now have a Patreon. Woohoo! I'll put that link in the show notes. Other than that, I still have some spaces for my retreats coming up in Austria this summer with my teacher, Steffi Price. The retreats are all about the inner relationship. If you're curious about that and you want more information, I have a retreat in June and one in September. I have one spot left in June and a few spots left in September. So email me at natalie@anxiouslovecoach.com if you want more info. I talked about it a bit back on my relationship anxiety revisited story, which should be a couple episodes back. So that's it. Thank you so much for listening. I know this is a long one, but I hope you found it very helpful. I know I say this at the very end, but I'm so grateful for you. And if you love this podcast, please consider leaving me a 5-star review. I'd be so grateful. And if there is anything at all that you think would improve this podcast, sure, send me topics. I keep a long running list of things I'd like to cover in the podcast. But if there's anything that you think I could do to improve, I've been really working on my ums and uhs, you guys. I have pressed and cut them out, but I'm trying to be more concise. If there's anything you think I can improve, feel free to shoot me a DM and let me know. I really want this podcast experience to be so helpful for you. So let me know what I can do to improve. And if you love this podcast, I would be so thrilled if you wrote me a 5-star review. I would love it very, very much. And also, if you end up trying something from this episode in your relationship, let me know how it goes. Even if it's just, I had the urge to criticize my partner's shirt choice when we went out for dinner and I didn't. And I'm so glad I didn't because blah, 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 blah. We had a great time. Tell me these things. I really want to know. I trust that this stuff works because I've seen it time and time again with my clients and in my own life. But it's so cool when someone that's a podcast listener tells me that something that they did worked. I love hearing that stuff. Please let me know how this podcast has impacted your life. It means the world to me. And if you try something and it doesn't work, tell me that too. I would love to know that many different outcomes exist and it can be very humbling for me. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful for you. I hope you join the Patreon, but if not, I will always be creating content like this for the world to enjoy. So thank you. And I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Have a beautiful day and talk to you soon. Thanks so much for listening to The Anxious Love Coach today. If you loved this episode, please hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and maybe share it with someone that you believe might benefit from these perspectives. Please also subscribe to my email list at www.anxiouslovecoach.com, as I'm trying to reduce my reliance on social media. In exchange, you will receive my free relationship anxiety meditation and more supportive tools sent your way. If you would like to work with me, head on over to my website at, again, anxiouslovecoach.com to explore different tiers of coaching options and online programs. Thanks again for listening, and catch you in the next episode. Have a blessed day.